Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the big old, wide old world. My name is Jade and this is How to App on iOS. Today we are hanging out with Jude from Maezend Band Lab. So buckle up, folks. Grab yourself a drink and get ready to rock. Ooh, yeah.
You've been alone for a while, you've been stuck inside, waiting for it. Spending too much time in the back of your mind. You need to get out. I need to get out too. You've been alone for a while, you've been stuck inside, waiting for it. Spending too much time in the back of your mind. You need to get out. I need to get out too.
Howdy daddy diddly do. Hi folks, welcome to the show. I hope you're all doing really well. So that was Jude, and as the Maezend Band Lab is what his music is called. So before we get into bringing him onto the show, we'll do the usual and say hi to you all. And let's quickly run up the list here. Hello to Gary Hobbs, man. As DFC, Russ, Scott, Tom Rochelle, as I'm scrolling, SM Borthwick is here, Pendergett is here also. Thomas Gillane, welcome to you. Patrick from the Garage Band Guide, welcome to you. Weren't you here last week? Or something like that. Something like that. Who can remember? My brain's fried. And I can also see Doctor's Orders. Who else is here as we scroll down the list? Dean Thomas, welcome to you. Did I say Scott? Yeah, I think I did. Who knows? My brain's a mess. It's a puddle. Danny Broderick, welcome aboard. Deep Gravity, good morning, Deep Gravity there in Australia. Let's see, Ed Zielinski, hello. Bubba. Synth Widow, hello. Joe. And normally if Joe's there, I guess Doug's normally not far behind. I haven't scrolled down that far, but let's see. So getting down towards the end of the list, I think I'm here. But hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm super excited today to have one of my good friends, somebody I've known for a fair while, through, again, somewhere that we've all probably become quite familiar with, the Garage Band Users Group and various other groups on Facebook. And this guy's music I don't know. It's very unique, very interesting, very topical. It's hard to explain. I don't know how to explain his music because he's so unique and there's nobody else I've ever heard who sounds like him. So I've been privileged to know him for a few years now and see his music evolve, and I'm looking forward to what's going to come next, but we're going to find out more about him today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show, once I get my mouse in the right position, Jude. Welcome aboard to the show for the first time. How are you going, my friend?
Hey, Jade. Hey, everyone out there. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
It's awesome to have you here. Let me just hit play because I'm going to do what I normally do and hit play on my Soundcloud and have a bit of your music playing in the background.
Very cool.
So, how are you doing there? How's life in America at the moment?
Oh, it's a new day.
It's a new day. Hopefully it's a new year and everything like that and good stuff coming for you guys.
We can only hope, right?
Definitely, 100%. So let's get straight into the questions today. Jude, what does music mean to you?
Music means escape, I think. Yeah, it's escape for me. It's also therapy. It's been around my whole life. You know, luckily I had parents who listened to what I think is good music. I have an older brother who introduced me to some really cool music, and a local radio station that is, I think, a great radio station to introduce me to a variety of new music. Used to say I like all kinds of music except commercial country, but I joined a group that shares, commercial music and found out there's a lot of music I really don't like and can't handle. So that was kind of an eye-opening experience. I'm not a big death metal guy.
Yeah.
Although when we go through my early influences, you'll be surprised to hear some of them, I think.
Well, musical taste is subjective, really, isn't it? That's the beautiful thing about music. I think there's something for everybody.
And it can change over time.
Yeah, definitely.
I hated rap at first. Now I really love rap and hip-hop and that sort of genre.
I think, too, not to put words in your mouth or anything, as musical styles change over decades and years, the way it's presented and how it's written and what it's written about changes too with the social scene at the time too. So
that's a great point. Yep, I'm sure it's all of that. So I think familiarity has a lot to do with it. As much as I love new and interesting and sounds I've never heard before, I think it has to have a little bit of familiarity to me to grab me right away. If I've purchased an album, I'll give it multiple tries, because I've invested in it. And some will come around, and sometimes it won't, no matter how many times I play it. But
yeah, look, I feel sorry for a lot of today's younger generation who aren't so invested in purchasing an album as such, because they miss out on that experience you get from albums that you buy, where at first you're like, you know what? It's not really doing it for me. But then over multiple listens, it becomes the album that you can't live without for the rest of your life. And I think there's a lot of youngsters who are probably going to miss out on that.
That's a great point as well. Also, what I always loved is finding my favorite song that was not the hit single or not the song that I heard on the radio that made me buy the album. But there's another song on that album that I love more than all those songs. And that's always a fun search for me.
Why does that not surprise me, as you're a bit of a rebel when it comes to music? So
I try to be, but the whole it's Maezend Music Lab, not Band Lab, just to correct you there. And we could talk about that word. That's fine. You know what? It's not even a lab. I thought I was so experimental at first. I'm not really that experimental, but I do try different things. I don't try to adhere to rules that much, although I think there's some benefit in knowing the rules before you break them. Not that I know them all for sure.
I did that. I did that this morning because I was rushing to get all my questions into my notepad, and for some reason I had BandLab open on my iPad. Oh my god, that is so stupid.
Well, what's funny? I started that page as just I had named my studio Maezend Studios, and I started that page because I was sharing my songs with my cousin and a good friend, and I would email them to both. So then I started that as a way for me to just share my tunes online easier. So I named it that. But then I as things went on, I just kind of took that on as my name for my music.
I do apologize.
The word Maezend. I'm sorry.
I do apologize. That is
No, not a problem at all. All your text, you had it right.
Yeah. No.
Just when you were saying it in the intro.
It was the one thing. It was the one thing I stuffed up.
You said my name right.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty easy.
I get Judd a lot. I hate Judd. But
it's
anyway,
it's interesting, you know. So yeah, like I really wasn't aware of this whole Maezend Music Lab thing. I knew you by your name. Like that's more of how I've known you for the longest time. So yeah, please go ahead. How did the full story of how this came about?
Well, I like unique names for things. I don't like just calling it the shed. So we have 3 sheds on this property that we happened to buy, and it had 3 sheds. So we have a unique name for each of them. But I also wanted to name my property. We live at the dead end of May Avenue, M-A-E.
Right.
So I just came up with Maezend. I like the Z. I wanted to get a Z in there. So it kind of sounds French or like some other language. We have a sign on our little front gate that says Maezend. So when I was naming that page, I thought of Maezend Studios. And then I named that Maezend Music Lab, again, because I thought it was just going to be me and a few friends sharing music. I've since started an actual private group, which is now defunct, that I found GarageBand users. And before that, I was in a bunch of different like original music sharing groups, just sharing my own music. And then I found my home in GarageBand users group for sure, as well as some other Facebook groups, as you mentioned.
So you mentioned at the beginning about your family. So do you recall the types of music that was played in your household when you were a kid? When you were maybe not so much paying attention to music at that time? Things that stuck with you?
I do, very much so. And I was paying attention because my parents had a really rocky time when I was like 5 or 6. I mean, they were constantly fighting and almost got divorced. And I feel like the songs my father put on were like telling my mother something. Right. So there was that song by Eric Clapton. I forget what it is now, but it's how could we have known that promises would end? I don't know if you know that song, but he played a lot of Eric Clapton, a lot of Bob Dylan. His favorite artist was Willie Nelson. So a lot of Willie Nelson in my house, and a lot of Beatles. My mother was a big Beatles fan. So she had all of her Beatles albums when she was younger. I mean, she had us pretty young. She was 18 when she had me. So, you know, I Love Paul scrawled all over the front of the albums and stuff like that. So those were the early sounds going throughout my house. And then I did have an 8-track player. So my first 8-track was a Monkees, probably the best of the Monkees.
Okay.
And then I also, 45s, I was big into 45s. My grandmother who lived with us would take me out and purchase, I think I had Dr. Hook, uniquely enough, you turned me back onto Dr. Hook, but that reminded me that she was only 16, 45. I forget what the B-side was, but I also had Barry Manilow all by myself. Wow. Yeah, I like depressing. But the first LP that I actually purchased, I think, again, with my grandmother's help, was Rod Stewart's Do You Think I'm Sexy?
I love
But I also had, as well as an older brother, I had a lot of younger uncles who were like close friends. And whenever we went over to my other grandmother's house, they would be there playing their music. Uncle Mark, who was like 2 or 3 up from the youngest, he was in a band. He played guitar. They were all big Kiss fans. So as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, I was big into Kiss. My mother worked for CBS Records, so she would bring home the records with the corner cut off, which I think were called cutoffs. Yeah. So we had all the Kiss albums, with multiples of the stickers that came in or the tattoos. She would get extras of those. I think that was CBS Records she worked at, which later became Sony Music. I have notes here, by the way. I'm not doing this all by memory. Uncle Mark will play a big role into me recording my own music later on in my life. But when I was around 13, I had a lot of cassettes. I had a boombox that I carried around. And in 1983, I was big into Motley Crue. And the New Year's Eve going from 1983 to 1984, I was so into that cassette, Shout at the Devil, that I threw it up in the air at the countdown. So it was up in the air from 83 to 84. And I caught it in 84.
Oh, yeah.
1984 was a big year. I was 13 years old, and my older brother introduced me to not only good music, but other things.
Other things, folks. Other things. Let your mind
But
run
I
free.
really hated like the new wave. I hated a lot of 80s music. I was in like the Men at Work and stuff like that, but I really didn't like Flock of Seagulls. That whole new wave thing, I really pushed back on it because I was into the music of the late 60s, early 70s, psychedelic stuff, Cream, Blind Faith, Moody Blues, Syd Barrett. These were my dark years, but all very informative. Pink Floyd was my all-time favorite band through high school and after graduation, with probably Eric Clapton on a similar level. Big into blues, playing a lot of blues. Later found out that, Eric Clapton didn't write many of his songs, and I lost a little bit of respect for him. But my brother got me into Traffic, CSNY, Todd Rundgren, again, more 60s and 70s. Then when the 90s came, that local music station that I listened to really turned me on to current music. And that's now like a new band, a new song, a new album is so much more exciting than, going back to those older bands that were my influences. So I'm very much into new music right now, and have been since the 90s. As far as current bands, I would say Gorillaz. Wilco is my favorite band, and Jeff Tweedy is a big influence on my writing and everything about me. The band, not that they're a current band, but they're a huge influence on me. And Kendrick Lamar and Mac Miller, that probably rounds it out pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad and amazing list of influences there. You bring up a point that I wanted to touch on, going rewinding. I think, I bet your parents communicating through music. So I find it really interesting because I think back then a lot of parents possibly did this because, back in this era when we were growing up, it wasn't a very cool thing for dads and stuff to speak their mind and express their emotions back then. So, your dad throwing Eric Clapton at your mum and her answering back with a bit of the Beatles really says a fair bit there. I think of my family growing up, and my mum would play like disco and Donna Summer and all this stuff, and my dad would fire back with horse racing on the radio. So
that's awesome.
He hated music, it's gross. Dr. Hook, man, I want to talk about Dr. Hook for a second. Like, incredibly underrated artist, in my opinion. You mentioned that 16 song, which, these days is probably frowned upon by a lot of people. But there's a lot of really high-quality stuff there that people seem to overlook because of that song, or that song kind of was their marquee kind of thing. And I think the song which I really first heard of Dr. Hook that pulled me in to just delve into all their music was I Was Stoned and I Missed It, and it was just this boom, 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 and it just reminded me of like Zappa and the stuff I was into, and I just think they're incredibly underrated. Definitely. Absolutely.
And you're probably right. That might be the reason why. I also think there was like, whether it was that song that did it to them or just those few hits that have, I don't know how to explain it. Like I said to you before when we chatted, there's an element of cheesiness, as good as it is and as great listening as it is. And, sometimes that can elevate something, but I think sometimes people get like just an aversion to it maybe for some reason. And it takes time for it to look back, almost like the Bee Gees. I just watched a documentary on the Bee Gees, and I did this with all those bands. I got to a point where I was too cool for them. Right?
Yeah, right.
But now looking back on it, I mean, it's incredible what they did with their harmonies and all of their songs. And speaking of the Bee Gees, I do a lot of double tracking on my vocals, mainly just to cover imperfections. But I've since developed, and watching that documentary, the way the two brothers sung together to form like a whole new voice or a whole new vocal, really. I like that. I like putting sounds together. There was a solo song by David Gilmour on his first solo record. I think it was called No Way Out of Here, the song. And there's a hook that has a guitar playing a line with a harmonica, and they both play the same thing, but together they sound like a completely different instrument. So I love that. And, when I first started recording, and I haven't gotten to that part of the history, but, by error, I was just putting so many sounds on top of sounds to try and find this, the golden key of some sort, but realized that was just creating issues with frequencies and had to dial it back. But I think that was part of why I wanted to have the lab as part of my name or some sort of experimental something.
Yeah. I love these conversations because as you were talking then, I was just writing down something for me to go down a rabbit hole, because I love rabbit holes. I used to be into conspiracies, but now I love rabbit holes, like things like, how did double tracking vocals begin? Who are the... Because now it's used, it's like a standard thing now. You would have to think it'd have to have come from somewhere in the 70s. I wouldn't have thought it was like a 60s thing or anything like that. I don't know.
Well, often I say, you know what, save it for the chorus, save it for a special time, because it makes both things sound more interesting. It gives that dynamics. But then inevitably I'll hear a song and it comes in with two people singing. It's not necessarily the same person double tracked, but from the very beginning in the verse, it's two vocals, and so I'm like, I'm justified in doing it, but I need to do it less, just to change it up a little bit.
Yeah. Everything is in moderation, just like drugs and everything else. So you mentioned Kiss as well. I want to go back there because it's becoming a thing on this show. Nearly every single person who's come on this show mentions Kiss. Why do you think
that's one of those bands that also has that, they get either a bad rap because of the makeup or, they say that, reading comments, there was never any good music. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
For sure. Yeah, well, there's clearly something there, be it the stage presence, be it the makeup, be it the look, be it the music. There was something that resonated with many of us back in the 70s that made Kiss be an integral part of a lot of our interest in music today. Anyone who is from that era, anyone from the last 15, 20 years probably looks at us like, what? Gene Simmons is a pig.
True, but no. Well, they had the Kiss Army. They were like one of the first bands to have this sort of like whole mailing fan club and all that sort of thing. And I forgot to mention the Grateful Dead, which are a huge influence on me as well, which they kind of did a great job with marketing in the beginning as well.
Yeah, and like it or not, marketing is... it's an incredible tool, and a lot of us struggle now these days with marketing because people don't know where to go. People don't know how to publicize themselves. It feels like we're in a world of, there's only Facebook. Is that the only place that we can market ourselves now? And Facebook's such a dead-end place to actually market yourself because most of your friends couldn't give a shit about your music. And it's really hard to find groups like the GarageBand Users Group or Create, Record, Release, or these groups that we've found. So,
and in most cases, they're private groups, which when I first joined GarageBand Users Group, it was not a private group. Myself and some others lobbied for it to become private. As you can imagine why.
Yep.
We're insecure. We're putting it out there. I don't mind putting it out there to a group of like-minded individuals who knows how difficult it is to do this stuff. But just the average friend who just wants to listen to music, they're not going to get it. Yeah. At least not with my stuff. They're not in most cases.
I think most of us have been down that path. It doesn't matter the style of music. I think, I've said on my show a lot, I have a lot of trans people on my page who send friend requests because we're trans and that's the only thing we have in common. And I've started removing a lot of those people because you know what? That's not enough for me. Like, if you're my friend, like, I want some value from this friendship. I don't give a shit what you look like, what's between your legs, what gender you are. That's not going to do it. And clearly, they're never going to interact with the interests that I have. So you have to make those tough decisions.
That's a good point. There has to be more.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my thing for 2021. There has to be more from this relationship. There has to,
Yeah, it needs to be reciprocal.
Yeah. It's Facebook. It's a bizarre place. I'm just going to give a shout out to, because there's a few more people who've joined, and I want to make sure I include everybody and be inclusive. So I can see Pete Johns has joined here. Metalhead Hippie has joined the chat. Let me scroll up. Andy Goldsby is here. Stu Cash is here. Where was I up to? Pinaki Deb. Hello, Pinaki. Another person who's been on this show. Who else have I forgotten? If I've missed you, Lady Rhodaline Straight is here as well. I try and cover everybody because I hate being uninclusive. I know how much it sucks being a trans person. Let's see. I think I've got everybody. If I haven't, just shout out in the next minute or so and go, "Oi, you meet me, loser," and I'll find you. So what was the first instrument that you picked up? Was it a school thing that you were forced to play, or was it something you wanted to pick up?
Oh, I'm sure it was my Uncle Mark's Les Paul. But again, that was just sneaking into his room when he wasn't there and hoping my grandmother didn't know. But in school, I begged my parents to let me play saxophone. I'm sure I said, "No, I don't want a used one. It's got to be a new one."
Of course.
And I just could not hang with it. You know, the anxiety of like trying to follow those notes as I'm playing. My brain doesn't work like that. And I think the nerves got into me. So I did not last long with that at all.
So you actually wanted to play it. Oh, and I did miss somebody. Joey Helpish. There you go. All right. Call me a loser. So at least you did want to. Like, you know, a lot of people that come on the show normally start off with the recorder. So you were lucky in that regard. It seems like you weren't forced to play the recorder. So that's good.
I think we did have that in music class, but that was like not a choice. We all had one, I think. I'm going back, you know, and the wood block.
Hey, don't knock the wood block. I'm sure there's somebody out there going, resin. What are you talking about? I love my wood block.
I love your wood block too.
Yeah. Wood block forever. Keep
more wood block.
Yeah. Forget 2021 is not the year of more cowbell. It is the year of more wood block. So.
I know Monique would agree with that. She likes the wood block.
So sneaking in and grabbing the Stratocaster. Did you get in trouble for doing that?
The Gibson Les Paul. He was primarily a Les Paul guy. That's okay. I did a few times. Yep, I did a few times. But when I finally got my guitar, it was age 13. My father, there was a music store in my little town where I grew up called Music Museum, and they had a used Fender Lead 3. I don't know if you're familiar with that guitar. They were only made, like, I think 1982 maybe. There was the Lead 1, the Lead 2, and Lead 3. I think U2, he played one. Bono from U2 played one. So I have, it was a couple of years old when I got it. It was $200 used, and I still have it.
Wow.
I modified the hell out of it. I think that was my 13th birthday, 14th birthday. I got new pickups put in it. 15th birthday, I had like a tremolo bar put on it. And I've since had all that like stripped off, and I've taken it back to more of its original. I don't play it that often. The frets are a little worn down, but I did have it kind of refurbished and set up, and that's it's my treasure, really.
Yeah, I can imagine to be worn down if it's been around that long. So, and well done for doing that. I wish I had my first. No, actually, I don't wish I had my first guitar. It was Pox.
All of my music friends always said you can get rid of the amp, but never get rid of the axe. So I figured, and I have traded in some cheap guitars, but that one I'll never get rid of.
Yeah.
And so walking to music lessons, guitar lessons, I think the first couple of weeks I was doing scales and everything. And I think I took some time off and came back. And when I came back, I said, I don't really want to learn the scales. I'm going to bring a cassette tape, and I want you to teach me how to play this song. And so that's what I did. He would listen to this tape, and he would teach me all the solo to White Room from Cream. Or I was never good at listening and learning by listening. I just could not do that. Better at it now, but back then I couldn't.
I think we all have different ways of learning too. Like, when I was a singing teacher myself, I tried to be quite flexible with people. I had my first 3 lessons were very rigid. And then after that, I tried to open it up to how the person wanted to learn. But I always felt the first 3 lessons were very important to help the person find the key, their key that they can sing within. And the first lesson was to give them homework to make sure that they go do it and then come back. Because homework is a great thing to throw somebody on their first time before you teach them anything, because it shows if they're going to come back the next week. But a lot of teachers are so rigid And I had a few guitar teachers, and because I was so rigid, I was just like, I'm not coming back. You're an asshole. Like,
has to be enjoyable.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And not that I don't like to work. I mean, I have a big work ethic at my day job and when I'm, doing my music. But if it feels too much like work for me, I think I won't come back to it as often. So it has to be fun. It really does. It's sort of my ethos.
And, a lot of the time I would look at singing lessons or guitar lessons as, I don't know, I really don't want to learn to sound like that person. That's the trap that you can fall into. It's like being influenced by music too. You can fall into that trap as well. Listening to certain styles of music that you start sounding like that, so much so people go, "Hey, you sound exactly like that," and you're like, "Oh yeah, I did." Well,
that's funny you bring that up because truly great singers, I don't like them too much. I don't know if it's because I'll never reach that, so therefore I like Bob Dylan's voice. I like Neil Young's voice. I like voices that have something that might be abrasive to other people.
Yep.
And again, I don't know if that's just what interests me or if it's because that's makes me feel like, oh, well, there's hope for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you. I look for the similar kind of thing. It's never ever judged on how good they are. It's got to resonate with you at the end of the day. It's like a movie. It's like a story. It's like a favorite smell or anything like that. It has to resonate with you, no matter how talented they are. They're Kurt Cobain. Always go back to that. People. The guy changed the whole landscape of the music industry across a decade, and he was only really a part of it for the first few years before he died.
How about that? Yep. Yeah.
So
true.
And his vocals, when you heard him live, they weren't the best. But then, it's the same with Mariah Carey. People go on about how good Mariah Carey is. She's pretty crap without all those wonderful effects behind her voice. It is what it is.
How about that? Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And ideally, a real singer singing songs. Glad that I'm forced to sing my own songs because it's taught me so many things, and I do enjoy it. Sometimes all I get is compliments on my voice. I don't know that that's so much my singing. I do like my voice. I wish it was in pitch more often, but I guess those are two different things.
And those things come with, pitch comes with confidence. There's so many things. Like, it's hard to talk about vocals because, you can pick up a guitar. It's an inanimate object that you can manipulate. The human body is a living organism. And people are so critical of their own singing when they get up. Just say they're in a home studio and they get up to do a vocal take and they sound like shit, and then they walk away and go, "Oh, I sound like crap," and they're so hard on themselves. They don't realize every day is a different day. It depends on how you woke up. You might have a sore neck. You're not hydrated enough. It's an organism. It's completely different than a saxophone, than a guitar. So people need to be less critical of their vocals and be easier on themselves and just eat well and sleep well and do those things, and you'll sing better. Like, it's
easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure, because we have the rest.
With the sleep well.
Yeah, well, we have the other stresses of the rest of what's going on in our rest of our lives to compete with. So,
But that's so true. And, I don't have every day to try a new take. My recording sessions per se are so limited, to when I have an empty house, and I am going to build a wall here eventually. And I think that will help with confidence of, not that I don't want to sing in front of my wife, but I think when I'm in an empty house singing, it's a completely different story than they're downstairs. I know they're downstairs. Let me try and sing under my breath. And it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Although that's how I started. My whole first year was that whisper singing.
Yep.
And my cousin and my good friend were, you got to sing out more, and they were right. They were right.
Yeah, you have to sing like you're singing in front of 70,000 people, and like it's the greatest performance of your life, and scream it, and even that. I remember when I was at school, we had this fantastic music course we did, and one of the greatest lessons I got for singing live was the teacher we had at the time told us, in front of a big crowd, focus on one thing, focus on like a pole or a light on the wall. And, and just sing to that. And over time, as you make love to that pole or that light or whatever it is you're focused on, as time goes on and you start realizing you're playing to more people, you'll stop looking less at that light or that pole. And and people won't even notice on the stage. That's the thing. Even if you're playing in front of 10 people, they wouldn't be all standing in the crowd going, "Oh my God, that dickhead's singing to a pole." They don't do that. People aren't that aware.
That's a great point too. Yeah. Before my son was born, my wife would teach aerobics classes every Wednesday night. So that was like I had the house to myself, and I would have songbooks open and I would sing other people's songs, covers. But I noticed how I could do one perfectly and then try it again, and all of a sudden I can't. So I don't know if it was my vocal cords getting tired, but I think that consistency, and you just brought it up, that it's an organism, but in the same session, one was great and one was not. And that consistency of being able to control that instrument, I just cannot. Hopefully I'll get there, I just feel like I don't do it consistently enough to get consistent with it.
Yeah, and I've been singing for 30 plus years, and I'm exactly the same. The consistency, it's hard to get, it's perfection is an impossible thing to reach because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Once you can draw that line in the sand and jump over it, you're all good, man. Just enjoy the mistakes. I just want to thank Metalhead Hippie, who threw a $5 super chat at me. Thank you. Bam. Thank you very much for supporting the channel Metalhead Hippie, who's coming on the show soon as well. I've let the cat out of the bag. Do you remember your first band that you're in?
Yes, because it was my good friend.
Them?
Well, I was never in a band, honestly.
Right.
We pretended and we tried, but it didn't work out. So never in a band, really, honestly. It was just my good friend who was a drummer, who later took on guitar and became better than me, like within a year. Just because he's that kind of guy. He just stayed in and that's all he did. Where I had a life, I was going out with friends and girlfriends and all that stuff, but never in a band. And that guitar night, it was going to bring me into an open mic night at some point. I was trying to get my nerves up. There was a local bar that was doing open mic nights. And then I found these music groups online, and it quickly became like, this is where I need to be. I can send it out there. Someone else can press play. I'm not a performer. I'm honestly not. I think my nerves are just too much to the point where I don't know if I'll ever get past that. But I definitely love making music and producing music.
And there is no wrong way to make music.
But no, I wish I was in bands. I mean, just to have that camaraderie. And back to the Monkees, that Monkey House. I mean, to have that. And Jeff Tweedy of Wilco, he talked about the Monkey House a lot too. He always wanted a Monkey House. And now he has the loft, blocks from his house that he can walk to. That would be a dream come true. Just to be in that conversation with other musicians and to talk about music and to talk about making songs. That's really all I want. I want a conversation around your music or my music. That's what interests me. Just let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we can make it better. Talk about what we liked about it. Maybe what we didn't like about it or what we liked least. I like putting it that way. It's not like I didn't like it. It was what I liked least about your song. It's a positive way to frame a negative.
Yeah, look, I'm a crap person to talk to about bands. I've played in lots of them, and I find they're like being married to 4 people after a while. And being married to one is super hard in itself, and 4 people is like, oh man. I have a friend, Lewis, who was on this show. His band's like a 9-piece band. Oh, man, I can only imagine the head fucks around that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Luckily, he's a control freak.
Okay, so he wrangles them.
Yeah.
I mean, all the egos and, trying to have multiple writers and even just collaborating with people. I've never done it from the ground up. It's always like, you're going to work on my song or I'm going to help you on your song. So it's always someone's song first. But to actually develop something from the ground up with someone, that would be really cool, I think. But also, I get anxiety about thinking about it. Like, being honest about what I don't like about what you just sent me is difficult. You have to kind of be careful about that.
It's kind of like making a baby in an orgy, really.
How so?
You know, not as messy.
Inevitably, it's only going to be two people's, really. The other people might get some credit, but
someone always gets hurt in the end. But but you know, there's a baby at the end of the period of time that you're forming the idea.
The most important part.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, you know. And the best thing about it is you get to release that child immediately out into the world, so other people can look after it instead of having to bring it up yourself. So that's one comfort with a song over a child.
I'm sure we could make a list.
Let's at least one episode I have to make some stupid comment, or several. So we've gone over your musical influences. How has making music for you over the last year, with all the lockdown and all the chaos and stuff going on, and how that's impacted? Because you know it impacts us. It's impacted us all differently. Some of us with our jobs, what we do outside of it. How's it impacted you and your mental health?
If I can answer this with a long history of answers, it might be better, and I'll make it quick. When I first started writing songs and recording, it was because my Uncle Mark passed away at age 46, unfortunately. He was 7 years older than me. And I inherited his 8-track recorder. It was a Zoom digital 8-track recorder with a CD burner. And when I got it, it had 9 unfinished songs on there that I mixed and sent to his siblings and all that. But when I first started, I was just learning how to use that recorder and just kind of doing jamming with myself, you know, on top of multiple tracks. So that for that whole year, I was just making these tracks that I called, you know, experiments. That's what I call experimenti. And I would send them to my friend who was writing real songs, and he would say, "These aren't songs. These are just instrumentals or whatever they were." And I know that. I'm getting familiar with this recorder. I'm just sending you things. Tell me what you think of them. I know they're not songs. So that kind of like put me on the mission to write real songs. And I got a guitarlele for Christmas. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of like a ukulele, but it has 6 strings. And it's tuned to A, as if you had your capo on the 5th fret. And for some reason, getting that little guitar opened songwriting up for me. I think because I could keep it on my lap and enter my lyrics in the computer. But I wrote 26 songs that year. And again, they were just me and the guitarlele and not very much production at all. So that would have been 2012. This past year, and the songs diminished in quantity every year since then, because I would add more production, more layers, and they got more intricate. So it was like 10 songs a year, 7 songs, 12. This year, I counted them up before. It was about 32 songs, although 5 were covers. There were 25 originals. So this has definitely been the most productive year I've ever had, and I'm sure a lot of other people are in that same boat. It's been difficult for me because my family has been home, you know, where they might be out, and that's when I'm most productive with recording and tracking. They're not out of the house as much as they would normally be. So the year has been like the most productive year, but at the very end, and I use the calendar year as my albums. So like January starts and, you know, the end is the end, and I'll name them. But they're just folders on my computer. You know, I've never released an album per se. But typically, and this year was no different, I'll make a big push at the end to try and release a bunch of ones that have sat there. And I think I stumbled towards the end of this year with playing a guitar solo in the completely wrong key. Hi, Scott. And some other things like that. And it really kind of put me in a little bit of a depression, made me not want to go to the laptop as often as I would. But I'm getting past that, and I'll move on. And so whatever didn't come out this year is now a backlog for 2021. And I'll pick myself up, and I'll dust myself off and be right back at it. I almost released one this morning, but I couldn't get the video finished in time, so I didn't want to just push it out.
Yeah, sometimes it's best not to rush those things. So, like, you know, there's been times myself where I've sat there and gone, oh, but I want to get it out by this day, and then pushed it and gone, oh, that was so stupid. I really could have fixed that up and made that just a smidge better. Yep. But, you know, as we say on this show, mistakes make you better.
Oh, then I'm going to get real good real soon.
Exactly. It's like I find that statement to be like a warm blanket because I make so many mistakes every day. It makes me feel like less of a dickhead.
Yeah, and I read that as well from, all the masters and my favorites, and, they all say the same thing, and it's so true. You do, if you learn from it, and, I have a bad memory, so sometimes I do forget, and I will repeat the same mistake, but most often I'll learn from it and remember it as painful as it was and try not to repeat it.
Well, I think it helps too. Like I've said this on some of my mental health shows. It's important to have good friends in your life who actually pull you up on things and don't mollycoddle you through life and continue to just say, oh, it'll be okay, or yeah, he's an asshole, or people who are straight up and say stuff like, no, you keep doing the same thing. Like, have you not noticed? Those I find quality friends. Like, it's hard to be reciprocal and give that back to people because it's such a non-common thing to have real friends who will just say, no, you've been saying the same thing for 2 years. Like, I think it's you. And I think that really applies to, like, music as well. Why these groups that we hang out in like GarageBand User Group, you do get that feedback, and it's not harsh. It's not calling you a dickhead or anything like that. So how has being in the groups helped you with that kind of feedback and helped you develop your music?
Oh, it's been incalculable, honestly. And I got to think there's a lot of that. And sometimes I wonder if it's the fact that I have that mod after my name in GBU that people feel like they have to be complimentary to me. I don't know if that's the case. I'm sure in some cases it might be, but not in all cases. I find that people are pretty sincere. I would appreciate a private message sometimes with those honest, critical feedback. But other people learn from it as well. So I don't feel like anyone's attacked me. It's respectable, and I do want the honest truth.
Yeah, look.
Truth is very important to me.
Truth is very important.
Honesty, honestly, is very important to me, and I'll be honest about myself in every case if I can be.
Truth is very important. We've, I'm not trying to go down a political world here, but we have been in a world, unfortunately, over the last 4 years, that has been shrouded, unfortunately, in a lot of lies, needless lies too. Really silly, infantile stuff. And, truth is super important. Like, so, and you can deliver feedback without being an asshole. Like, there are
absolutely
two types of people on this planet. Forget genders. There's assholes and not assholes. And, yes, there are two paths you can go by, as sung by a very famous band, and they are asshole or not asshole. So,
that's so true, but the reader also interprets it, how they interpret it.
Yeah. And
when you're insecure, you just think the worst, And as sincere as they may have been, with good intentions, you just think the worst.
And text ultimately is hard to read sometimes because not everybody is good at communicating via text.
True. I'm not. I have a lot of dry humor, and I don't always put the smiley face because I don't feel like I should have to, but inevitably people take it the wrong way.
Yeah. Emojis, have they helped or not? Who knows? So that's what emojis are for, to help convey that emotion, but I don't know if they really work to how they should. Look, and I'll tell you, as somebody who's a member of the GarageBand Users Group and not an admin, I still don't know who all the admins are, so I wouldn't expect that would be a part. Because it's not like you guys have I'm looking now at the GarageBand User Group, and next to your name, there isn't some gigantic flashing light that says, I am a mod, everybody. So I don't think it's that.
And it's not only that group. So, maybe that's, again, just my insecurity.
Yeah. Well, hopefully... Hopefully what I've just said there has taken away that part of your insecurity, because I didn't even know you were a mod until, I think, when we all went on Pete's show last month. That was the first time. Either I'm just stupid and don't follow things. Or
Well, I mean, since we're bringing up the group and you brought up Pete, obviously I have to thank Pete. When I first joined the group, he was instrumental in helping my confidence build, and it was very nice of him to ask me to be a mod, and I was honored to be. Since then, he's great at putting his attention on beginners.
yeah,
And I don't use iOS, so there's that disconnect there. But I have to also thank my buddy Ron Ward. He's played my songs on his show so many times, and his interest in my music is just heartwarming, and I can't thank him enough. Getting emotional about it.
yeah, I know. I love Ron so much. He's somebody who I speak to nearly every single day, Ron. And he disappeared for a little while just recently, and trust me, I was in his messages as much as I could, going, "Get your ass back over here, boy." And it's so good to see him back, because he's an integral part of that group who does play all of our music, gives everyone a chance, and he's absolutely invaluable. So,
and it's not just playing my music; it's the things he says about it. And again, I think he's sincere, and it's not just me. He does it for many people, and it really helps you feel good about it and want to do more.
Yeah, and Patrick's written here in the chat, Ron is the heart and soul of GBU. I totally agree. And you're right with Pete too. Pete, I met Pete and got introduced to the group as well. But as you move on and get a bit better and stuff, Pete moves on to new projects of new beginners and people, new beginnings, and brings them along for the ride. And we all take comfort in Ron. And Ron becomes our surrogate mother. You like that, Ron? If you're watching, we all suckle off your musical teeth. I'm sure he'll laugh at that when he watches it back. So let's talk about what you record on. So what do you use? What computer? What DAW? What's the deal? How do you make your music?
Well, as I said, I inherited that silver box from my uncle, and I was making music on that 8-track recorder until 2015, and I joined a original music sharing group, and there was a gentleman on there who took a liking to my music, and he was from Florida, and we became like virtual best friends. And he was making music on his MacBook and making it in GarageBand, and he kept pushing me to that. And a MacBook so expensive, how am I going to afford that? And I think in 2015 I got a really decent bonus from my company, and I purchased a MacBook, and I moved to GarageBand, and I never looked back. I mean, being able to cut and paste and move things around and chop things up. Right before I did that, I was starting to sequence samples on the Zoom recorder and kind of program them. And that was really cool. And that was very similar to what I would do in GarageBand. So I think in 2018, when I started collaborating with John Thomas Hall, who's not been active too much lately, but we formed that little virtual band Capitol Hall.
Yep.
And he pushed me to get Logic, and I'm so glad he did. As you know, Logic is an Apple product and looks just like GarageBand, but with a lot more features and buttons and dials and stuff. So I do all of my production in Logic, but I start every project in GarageBand, primarily because I like the way it tracks guitars, and I usually start most songs with a guitar structure or piano. So I'll start that basic structure in GarageBand, and then I'll open it up in Logic and finish the rest of the project and almost all the production in Logic.
Yeah, and Logic.
I've taken some private classes at a university, just like a summer course with like 5 classes on Logic. And I've since taken some private lessons with that same instructor virtually, which is much cooler because we can share our screens. I can share my song with him. He can listen to the mix and give me feedback. So I did that for like 5 sessions this past summer, and it's been very valuable. But again, with the bad memory that I have, if I don't put it into use right away, it's something that I'll kind of lose, but I can go back to notes, and he's available, and I'm friends with him now on Facebook. He's from Philadelphia, and he's worked with the Lumineers, and he's got his own band. And, it's been very helpful to have him kind of coach me through some of the things Logic can do. I since got a launch pad for Christmas, so I'm now trying to program my own drums as opposed to using the auto drummers, which when I was recording in the Zoom, it was just one drum loop that just kept going. No drum fills, no nothing. Yeah. So to have the auto drummers, that was like a major improvement with my songs. And I really do try to whip them into shape by like cutting that track into sections and tweaking each region and trying to get them to do exactly what I want. But it doesn't always work, and sometimes you have to supplement with actual hits on the controller or now I have the launch pad. It's great. I haven't used it too much, but I'm loving it. There's been a lot of talk about gear and how gear doesn't make your song better, and that's totally true. But I use gear a lot to help motivate me and get me excited. I love hardware. I love gear, especially if it's got buttons that light up. I love to surround myself with this stuff. And fortunately, I've been able to, and it's not like I probably buy a piece every year. Again, Christmas rolls around and that's the beginning of my year, my album. So true, you can make a great track without anything really other than your iPad or your iPhone. But I love the gear. And, it motivates me, and I try to use it all.
We don't gear shame here either, so that's that's one thing. I like gear too, and I think there's different ways to buy gear. You can buy gear that does contribute to what you're doing instead of just buying gear for the sake of it. So, and you're right about the auto drummer. I've talked about this on this show many times. As more people can use GarageBand, be it on iOS or Mac or now even Logic, because they are so similar, you start to be able to recognize a song and go, oh, that's GarageBand. I can tell the auto drummer. You can really start to tell. So you need to, as you grow with using GarageBand or these tools, to actually add in these extra flares and touches to take users out of that experience, especially if you are a part of a group like GarageBand users group. You're in that echo chamber of hearing those drums all the time, and you're like, I can pick that.
Well, see, that's a really good ear. I don't know if I would be able to do that, but maybe over time I would. What I worry about in that same aspect is those samples, which, I try to edit them when I bring them in, but, you might use the same exact sample that I use, and then it's like, oh, my original song is not so original anymore.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to be able to tell an auto drummer by listening to it, that's a pretty good ear. I don't have that ear.
I think it's, for the auto drummer, for me, it's the drum, it's the rolls, that's what gives it away for me, because there's only a very few selection. There's only, when you move that little auto fill
slide
section, there's only a very limited number, and it's always the fill that gives it away from me. I'm like, oh, there it is. That's that fill.
But if you chop that region at the end, sometimes it'll do something different there now.
For sure. Chopping it up helps. So chopping it up into small bite-sized pieces does help totally. But then adding that little bit of extra flair. So it's really exciting that you've got that new piece of gear to do that. It's part of the reason I got a drum kit. Because I used the auto drummer for a long period of time, but then would go back to tapping it out because I just naturally want to do that. I just got sick of tapping the screen.
My uncle had moved to a digital drum set right before he passed away, and one of my cousins inherited that. But I started thinking about that, and boy, I wish my son, who's now 11 years old, would get into drumming. Can't get him away from the video games, but I would love to have a little drummer in the house.
Yeah. I think I saw somebody ask a question where to find your music. So you can find Jude's music in the description. There are links to SoundCloud and his Facebook page. So, but I'm going to go back to, I'm going to get to that very soon. What time is it? So I saw Mike Holmes was here as well. Hello, Mike Holmes. Welcome along. He said, I think he said further up here he wouldn't miss this show. So clearly he's here for you, Jude, and not for me. So
I will say that, some of my best work is in these private groups, the GarageBand users group, the SongSpark group, and the Create, Record, and Release group. Why those songs aren't on these public platforms, again, my insecurity. Some of the content Some of the lyrics, I don't know. I just there's only a limited amount on those on my Facebook page or even on SoundCloud. But SoundCloud is probably the better option, but you don't get the videos on SoundCloud. Not that the videos are that great.
All right, so going on from that, let's just get down to it. Your lyrics. Now, what is it about your lyrics? You think they're too controversial?
Well, I have a corporate job.
Yeah.
I sing about drugs a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I do drugs, but I feel like
exactly.
A lot of the songs that caught my interest all through life not always reference drugs, and I'm not advocating for drug use at all. But I feel like a lot of that is why, and I don't want anyone to do it the wrong way, and
sure,
that inevitably happens with people.
All right,
and also political, but I don't really care so much about that.
Yeah, see, and you know me pretty well. I just don't give a fuck. I just say what I think, you know, but then, you know, I don't have a corporate job, all right, and I understand this. I'll tell you a little story. I hate, you know, telling these stories. So I was in a relationship. I've only ever dated one guy as a trans person, right? And he's American, very not a conservative person, but he's from Florida, pretty quiet, pretty kind of relaxed, and smoked pot or whatever. He worked a very corporate job. And for the 4 or 5 years we were together, he hid me as a partner, which, you know, at the same time, you know, you go, oh man, what's that?
What year was this, approximately?
2003.
Okay.
So not that long ago. Still, like, you know, things were still quite progressive then, you know. And, you know, I put up with it. But eventually, like, I think after it kind of ended, I think the next person he was with, he kind of just became more open as time went on, and nothing happened. So, and I'm not I'm not trying to like change you or put it out there, but you know, it's like it's not always the case of people do find it. It's another way, you know, we talked about Facebook, how your friends don't give a shit about your music. A lot of the time, these people will never find your music because they don't give a shit enough to dig that deep. You know, at the end of the day, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I hate seeing creativity stifled. And, you know, I think you're an incredible artist. And that's one of the reasons it is the reason I have you on the show, because I want to share your talent with people. And I really love that you're really in your face, experimental, you create topical stuff. So yeah, I just hate hearing that you feel that you have to do that, and I hope that changes.
I appreciate that, Jade, and I thank you. And you might be like, you know, one of the little angels that I'll remember for my entire life, that you got me out of my shell. But it's going to be a full-time job, and you're going to have me on many more times. But honestly, it's a dirty feeling to feel like I can't be myself all the time. I have to hide who I really am. You know, it's not a great feeling. But honest about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I will also be honest about the fact that I'm a hypocrite and contradict myself all the time. You know, it happens.
Look, man, I appreciate your honesty. I can absolutely empathize with you, being a trans person and living a life for 30 years hiding who I was. It's a shit feeling. It's an incredibly shit feeling. I don't wish it upon anybody, you know, to have to tiptoe around people who really, they don't fucking matter, you know. And a lot of the time, look, I've written about this in articles in the LGBT kind of press when I was a journalist. A lot of the time when you come out as a trans person or gay, so you can extend this to other avenues of life, most people don't give a shit, and you've just spent all this time going, oh my God, I wasted all that energy. And for some people, after they do, you know, be more honest, not more honest, I hate to make it like they're lying or anything like that. Then regret kicks in. It's like, oh, why did I do that? And then there's more anxiety that piles on top after you.
I'm sure. And I keep hearing the older you get, the less you give a shit. And I hope someday I'd get to your point where I just don't give a shit. And, we talked about empathy and, I just don't want to be a person that doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that you can give a shit about and it's important. And other people that their feelings really don't matter to your life that you really shouldn't care so much about.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a balance, I deeply give a shit about many, many things, but when it comes to like my character or my gender or anything like that, it has no bearing on anybody's life. I know my character is. I do my best to be truthful, and I think we're all in that situation. So they're the things that we really shouldn't give a shit about. But hey, and if you're in the group of asshole people, that's when you should give a shit because you need to change. If you're an asshole, folks.
I told you this would be more of a therapy session. But honestly, I thought this year would be the year that I do put something out, in a streaming platform. So many people have asked, and that's been like amazing. Like, why do you want to buy my music or stream my music? It just, but then that little trip up at the end of the year made me rethink that. Like, this is why you're not putting your music out for public consumption. It's experimental. They're just demos. I don't know.
Yeah, look, man. Even when you release stuff too, though, you're gonna release it. Like I released my Metheist album last year and uploaded it in mono. How the fuck did that happen?
People love mine.
I'm a seasoned musician. That was not the point. I had to go back and restructure it all and re-put it out, and and I'm sitting here going, how the fuck does that happen? It just happens. That's it, and you got to just build it. And I know I sat there going, oh, people are going to think I'm an idiot. I've got a show where I teach people how to make music and stuff. What the hell am I doing? And then, you know what, it was probably one person, maybe two people, I think, maybe Pete it was, and Ron, two. See, there they are again, those two amazing people are just like, whatever happens, And so, look, it leads me to this question. What is next? What's next for your music? You mentioned you're going to possibly release some stuff. I think you should, but then I don't control your life. Is it something you want to do?
It is something I want to do. It is. But you know what? This word, the A word, keeps coming up, that anxiety about even selecting the songs. Like, are my most recent the songs that should be going out, or should I go back to try and find what the best, but then what's best to me might not be best to you. So the whole thing's just it's a rabbit hole. It's a mind fuck.
Well, I think what's best to you is the most important thing, I certainly don't write music for people. I don't know, like all of these songs that you have written, have they been written for you or for other people?
That's a good question. I often put things in my lyrics specifically for this specific audience. That is you. That is other music makers.
Yep.
It's on my mind when I'm making music. What will impress these guys and girls? But ultimately, it's what I want to do. I'll never say, yeah, I don't love this, but they might. That never happens. I have to like it first.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'd be lying to say that I don't think about my audience when I'm making music.
Yeah, but you don't.
But who is that exactly?
You don't specifically write a song saying, I'm targeting this at these people. Like, does a song have to like resonate with you and make you feel good writing it? Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I'm, and I do perform them as I'm developing them, and it has to feel good as I'm singing it, playing it, listening back to it. I do have a saying that playback's a bitch for me sometimes.
A cruel mistress.
But I'm reading a book by Jeff Tweedy. It's called How to Write One Song.
Okay, yep.
And and there are techniques in here that I've never utilized, like chopping up your lyrics and rearranging them, and all different things that I might try. I might try to put into. It's interesting because he's writing to people that don't write music. He wants everyone to write one song. So for me, honestly, as I started to read this, I thought this is going to make me have a writer's block because I'm already writing music. I don't need to know how to write a song, but I'm interested in what he has to say. It didn't happen. I didn't get a writer's block, but I also haven't incorporated any of these details yet. I'm also reading a song that his son put out, who also makes music, and it's called Mirror Sound. Mirror Sound. And it's about people like us who record out of their home or their bedroom. Some of them are indie artists that you may have heard of. Others may not. But that's also an interesting read. So I'm kind of going back and forth on those two books. Not a big reader. It's been inspiring. The one inspires me to kind of get in the studio and do something, and the other one inspires me to write something.
There's an amazing film I love. It's a musical, and the reason I actually love it is on a few levels, and I thought I'd mention it. So it's called Rent. It's a musical, and back in the day, it was actually like a hit Broadway show, but it was based around...
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
So it was based around the HIV epidemic and a bunch of creative people who live in a creative space, and they're being kicked out of this creative space because of a big rich guy who takes over the blocks where all the creators are. But it's based heavily around HIV in that time, and everybody in this creative circle has HIV. But there's an underlying story which I love about it. So one of the guys who gets HIV, he's an artist, and it's him and his guitar, and all the way through this narrative of him, and there's a song on it called, I think it's called One Song, and it's about him trying to write the ultimate song, the one song that's going to do it for him. And all the way through, it's this struggle of him trying to write this one song, and he just can't do it. And it doesn't happen until the end, like as you get close to the movie, when he forgets about writing that one song and actually just falls in love with somebody, and that song just naturally happens.
How about that?
And it's a beautiful song. And I think, for me, I've never heard anybody talk about that film and bring that part of the film up, because it's only a minor part of the film, because the illness and stuff is more focused on. But I just think that is a beautiful thing. Just too many of us focus on, like, people are going to like this, and where the song came from falling in love and letting himself go to let himself fall in love. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think it reflects music really well. So
I'll have to go back and check that out. I've never watched that film. Honestly, believe it or not, as much as I love music, I hate musicals. I just
this is a rock musical.
Okay.
So it's a very much rock musical, and
I mean, it's okay when the Simpsons do it, but
and it helps that the songs are really good and well written, and it's not like it's not Grease or anything like that. It's got a little bit more depth than Grease.
I totally trust you, and I wrote it down. I'm going to go check it out. I see a comment that says, it said 95% of the time, people will like the song that you like least.
Yeah.
Which I've encountered that with was sending out the songs to my best friend and my cousin, and I wrote a song called "Corporate Uniform" because we used to have to wear ties. They stopped that, but and I don't even see clients, so why do I have to wear a tie at my desk? I used to hate that, so I wrote this song "Corporate Uniform." My cousin is a nurse, so he has to wear scrubs, and he really it really connected with that song, which I thought it was kind of like a silly song that was only, but he loved that song, and that taught me that you're not the judge of just put it out there. You created it, you spent the time doing it. You never know what your audience is going to, and conversely, the ones you think everyone's going to love end up being like, not many comments, or it just seems like that's the way.
Yeah, going back to talking about how, like, I feel sorry for young people who don't really buy full albums anymore. Back in the day, artists released full albums, and the audience chose what was going to be the hit off that full album. these days, a lot of artists now only release singles because they've decided they want this song to be the hit single. So that's a way of control. And, I've got a theory on this, if you indulge me for a second. On
Absolutely.
that, many artists, some of the biggest songs in the world, these artists fucking hate those songs, right? So I reckon they torture us now by putting YouTube Content ID on them, so it's to block YouTubers from playing it. And I'll give you an example. Eagles, Hotel California. They have to play that song everywhere they go, even though it's like a good song and whatever. But I'll bet they didn't even think that song. And I'm sure, I haven't read an interview about it, but I'm sure nearly every artist who says, God, we didn't expect that song to do well, and it became the song that we have to play forever. And I think that's why now when you play that on YouTube, you don't get a copyright claim. You get a strike. You get an absolute strike because they're punishing us because we've made that song popular forever. It's just a theory.
You're still into conspiracy.
Yeah, hey, at least I don't.
A little bit.
At least I don't think people are getting microchips injected into them. I'd rather think that as a conspiracy. All right, so what I will do now is ask you, do you have any apps that you use or programs that make your life easier to make music?
You know what? I work on a MacBook, so I guess there's still apps. I use a program called Video Pad Editor or Video Pad Pro to make my videos. I'm very frustrated with it. It's been the only program app that I've used since I've been making music and making videos. And I keep saying I'm going to move to iMovie, and I haven't. I mean, I think I deleted that app off my MacBook to make more room. But I'm so frustrated with Video Pad Editor that iMovie soon. I've been grabbing little video clips off of Pixabay.
Yep.
And I also use Pages for all my lyrics, and also just keeping my my album and track listings documented. And what else do I use? Not much. I do use Keynote to kind of create images for my slide images for the videos, or a title page. I've recently been turned on to Canva to get that perfect size for a CD cover, or I did do an image for the SongSpark header. I don't know that they've used it yet or put it in place, but I did that on Canva, which was like the the Facebook header template. Yep. What other?
Canva's great for that.
I don't use any third-party plugins, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a designer, so when I started designing and drawing, it was on the drafting board, and then quickly moved into AutoCAD, and now there's a bunch of other 3D design programs that we use. But I'm not very technical. I mean, I guess I'm half and half, but the memory thing is an issue. So to remember how to do what from where, it's overwhelming. And I've heard so many issues with, when you do an update, those third-party plugins can be issues. So I think I've just been scared away from them. And even though I've moved to Logic, I never fully exhausted all of the features of GarageBand. I never have. I just haven't delved into all those different things. So I never felt like I needed a third-party plugin. I've just used stock plugins both when I was in GarageBand and even now in Logic.
Yeah, and there's ultimately no requirement to use them. Sometimes they can absolutely bog you down and complicate things so much so that you don't make music. So I love, I know when we spoke before the show, you were like, and quote, I'm really boring. I don't have many apps that I use. Not necessarily. On the show, we've had people who have a long list of third-party apps that they use. So I think it's really fantastic that you've come on here and said, well, I don't. Because there's always two sides to every coin. And I think always having to have a long list of apps on here is not right, not wrong.
Well, I imagine they might inspire some folks, like the way my gear inspires me to come in and use it and, to get my money's worth out of it. But exactly what you just said, I have a fear that it will bog me down and create frustration, and it will slow down my process rather than enhance it. So I've just avoided them. Maybe at some point, there'll be something that will really help, improve my music, and it'll be worthwhile. But right now I'm still learning, just the basics. And the only reason I moved to Logic, and I think it was a worthwhile move, is I think my type of music, needs those little things that Logic has and GarageBand doesn't. Like, I like to speed up the stops and the starts, or, slow down the stops, speed up the starts, all those little things that are kind of like tricks, audio tricks. Like I mentioned Pink Floyd, and I don't know how much you know Pink Floyd, but
Heaps.
Little things like where, Roger Waters' vocal would go and just blend into a synthesizer. Not that you need any sort of program for that, but those little sonic tricks, I love that stuff. And you could say, well, your song sucks, so you need all those tricks to make it better. That's really not what it's about. It's just what I like hearing. And in most cases, my songs are just a basic folk song that I'll break down in the production process and try to turn into something else. And again, that's where the music lab comes from. But I hear every day people that are way more experimental than I am. But I think there's something about not giving a shit about what you're doing. It doesn't have to adhere to these certain rules that inevitably, for me, makes it better. Once you start really caring about it, I feel like you just dick it up somehow. At least I do. There's that fine line between rushing it out and not doing the things you should have done, and then just worrying about it too much and making it less of what it should have been.
And look, Logic's done a really good thing by making GarageBand and Logic more familiar with it, to look more familiar and use each other's sample library and stuff. I've just got an M1 Mac for the first time, a Mac for me, and man, I'm just loving that I can go from GarageBand to Logic and be able to create something in GarageBand, start off there, and then think, oh my God, I would really love to be able to take the vocals and shift them around and actually use the tools in Logic, and then just open it in Logic, do that, and then open it back up in GarageBand. That's fantastic. 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. Logic was this big scary thing for people using GarageBand, going, oh, I don't know, is Logic something I should move up to? Will it do my head in? And it won't. It's not so scary.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, we are at the end of the show. Now, what I will do here, because I've got this up on the screen, let me just go talk my way through this. So what I will ask you, so the last question I normally ask everybody is, when do you think is the best time for people to start creating, making whatever?
In terms of age, life, or time of day?
When? Anything. You can answer it any way you want. When is the best time to start creating?
I mean, as far as age, I would think, as early as you can. And I've seen kids playing around. I mean, my son was messing around with the sampler on the iPad. He wasn't really making music. He was just playing around. But I think that's what kind of starts it. And, we know some folks that started out as gamers and, thought GarageBand was a video game and started that way. So I would say the earlier the better. I don't think there's any restriction to that. As far as time of day, I mean, that happens. I mean, I've heard that in the morning is best when you first wake up. I have some other obligations usually at that time of day, but for me, it's all the time. I mean, I used to do it specifically after the family went to bed so I could, do whatever I want, but that really started to wear on me, and I can't do that as much anymore, just physically can't. I need to be somewhat motivated. So to force myself like at very late hours, it doesn't really work, but I have gotten up very early to work on some stuff before my day job. But as far as like age, I would think, these kids are playing with iPhones at infants, and so as soon as, I don't think there's you don't even need to know about music to make music.
Yeah, we're in that age, aren't we?
I wish my son was more interested, but I'm also trying not to push it too hard because I know how sometimes that can just make the parent-child relationship. Sometimes they go away from what you're trying to get them into. So I'm trying not to push it, and I'm hoping he gets there at some point. He does have a favorite artist right now, which is Juice World. He opened that up to me. I didn't even know who Juice World was. So it's cool. He's getting into music.
Awesome. What I'm going to do now is we've got a competition. We've got a Drambo. I'm giving away Drambo, so I'm just going to do that. So
Okay.
we'll move you from. Oh, we can go down here. I forgot I've got this screen here, so we can still be on screen. So we had 24 people enter, and I'm not sure if all of them actually wanted to enter, and they have the app already. So, because people don't let me know when they like. So I've only got one copy of it. So it's one copy of Drambo, and it's got the Waves plugin as well. So we're going to hit the auto generate here out of the 24 people, and whichever number comes up first, they are the winner. So let's do it. And it is number 21. So it's Maury P, who's actually in the chat, I do believe. So Maury, if you're still here, just let me know and make sure that you don't already have this and you weren't just commenting. Because like, if you've already got it, like, how are you going to use it? But if you were entering as such, congratulations, you have won a copy of Drambo and the Waves plugin. So yay, well done. Awesome. So you did want it. Cool, Maury. So I'll send a comment to you on the actual video with my email address if you don't already have it, and you can just shoot me an email and I'll send that to you. So that is that out the way. So there's the shameless stuff. We'll get back to over here. There we are. Cool. That's all done. Now I need to just prepare, because I'm going to play one of your songs to wrap it up. So thank you very, very much for making the time to come on the show today, for going through all the time of me hassling you to come on the show and putting all that pressure on you and setting up Skype and going, come on, man, I really want you on the show. Thank you so very much. I'm so glad that you came on the show. I hope you've had a good time on here as well.
Excellent time. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me, and thank you to everyone who spent the time watching.
Damn straight. Thank you guys for all being in the chat. As always, thank you for all your support. You guys rule. You're here nearly every day. I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you very much for that. Let me turn down this music we've had playing here in the background. And we shall, let me just, so here's the thing, folks, just bear with me, and let's all rally and make sure that Jude gets his music out on Spotify and stuff in 2021, because the next time I have him on the show, I don't want to be playing video clips from Facebook because the quality's poo. All right? Maybe next time we can have some higher quality. It just is what it is, man. I hate Facebook. Oh, my camera went blurry. What happened? Is it coming back? There it is. So I'm playing now. If I just load this up. Come on, Facebook, do your thing. So we are playing a track called Crooked, if I'm right. And I'm just going to make sure that it is the highest quality on here, because Facebook tends to... Cool, so it's set at the highest quality. So that's a good thing. So thanks everybody for hanging out once again. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and all that jazz. And you can always join my Facebook group, which is We All Rise Together, because we do, man. We got to support each other on this crazy planet. It's the right thing to do. And we will go out with this track by Jude from Maezend Music Lab, Jade. And this is called Crooked. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much, Jude, for hanging out with me. And hang on the line.
Thank you.
Hang on the line till after the show so we can have a quick catch up, and you might want to mute your mic. Adios, folks. Have a great weekend and all that jazz, and we'll see you real soon. Adios.
astray.